Kia ora koutou, everyone. Welcome to the Fast Forward lecture series. So Fast Forward is Te Pare's School of Architecture and Planning's annual lecture series, and it aims to foster debate and discussion and development within the disciplines of architecture, urban design and urban planning. This year, we're bringing together perspectives on disrupting finance, master planning and community development to address New Zealand's most pressing challenges around housing affordability, climate adaptation and sustainable urban growth. And as communities are seeking new approaches for the future, these speakers are demonstrating how to rethink fundamental systems, from investment models to planning frameworks to community governance, and how these can create pathways to genuinely sustainable and equitable futures. Today, we are very, very lucky to have Tim Gittos and Carolyn Robertson from Spacecraft Architects in Tamaki Makaurau, especially for this event, talking about big impact, designing for density, community and the climate. From self-build origins, where I originally met them, and co-housing innovations, Spacecraft demonstrates how thoughtful design and alternative development models can create affordable density that strengthens rather than fragments our communities. So let's welcome them shortly. Before we do, though, we have a very well-known and respected sponsor of this event, very generous from Jib. So we will watch their video. Thank you, Jib, and welcome Tim and Caro.
Thanks.
Kia ora koutou. Listening to Zoe introduce the talk, it occurred to me that, we're taking a little bit of an indirect tour to the point where we will talk about some of the housing futures that we are working on at the moment.
But it's all related, so don't worry. But if it's too divergent, feel free to sing out. But we've called our talk Trying It On. Not exactly clear why, but it feels as if that's sort of basically our modus operandi.
Yeah.
As Zoe mentioned, we sort of started our practice accidentally in a number of ways, but with two very good friends of ours, we moved to Wanganui, having practiced for other people for about 3 years and got bored. And we moved there and built a house with our friends, Ben and Sally from Patchwork Architecture. And great thing to do. Definitely spend money and quit your job with your friends and have a baby at the same time. That's us doing things. Just wanted to include this because it felt somehow analogous to the whole experience.
It stayed. It stayed up. The house did not burn down.
Played with fire and it was fine. This is the house we built. It's called the Dog Box, and it was really we won't go into why, but it was really kind of affirming in that there is an interest and an appetite for architecture that's not very, very urbisy, not too flashy. It's considered, it's not expensive, and it's accessible to kind of potentially normal sort of people. So, yeah, basically that was 13 years ago. We know because our eldest child is 13. And so, yeah, we started experimenting with little houses on pretty limited budgets.
Having both grown up in this half of the North Island, we're really interested in, like all of New Zealand, but be able to get outside in all of the weathers, because, the rain comes around, but it doesn't mean you want to shut the door. So that's where the big roofs, little footprints come from.
And the logic was sort of that, the veranda's free. And
that was the hopeful logic.
Yeah, it was wrong, but it was quite fun while it lasted. So these are all very small houses from sort of 40 to 80 square metres, all up in this part of the country, as Kerry said, so responding to climate in that way. And they're all actually, that's not one of them, just
that's
tricking.
Not a house.
But that's another basically outside building. But they're all in rural areas, they're all built to pretty constrained budgets. They're all first houses. This one's in Tutukaka.
Which we think makes a lot of difference because, the hustle.
Yeah.
You're willing to, when you architect say, you don't have enough money to build this, but you'll get something good, you say yes instead of no.
And people are good at listening when you say that they can't have things if they also can't afford it. So that's quite good. Lots of similar things, using a lot of natural materials, lots of glazing, natural ventilation, shading, all the kind of things that we would argue should just be there as of right and probably don't need too much
And the environment does a lot for you, in this country. The beautiful setting makes it, a fun place to practice architecture.
This is one where we realised that the verandas aren't free, so we tried to make the whole house a veranda, which was definitely cheaper. This one's getting a bit cooler, moving down the country. This is around Tokomaru and the Wairarapa, and the overhangs get a bit smaller and the interior gets a bit bigger.
Yeah, that was definitely the opening the outside and pretending it was a veranda phase.
And then this one's a big sort of dart that as an L shape backing into the wind, which funnels between two nearby landforms and protects a very large undercover deck, which is also the circulation between the rooms of the house. Oh, that's what it's like up there. So that was all kind of that period, which was really fun. But then we moved back to Wellington. Some of that was happening while we were in Wellington as well. But and it became obvious that land is in increasingly short supply in any of our cities, but looking within the city centre as opposed to any kind of greenfield area. We came across this lovely term by everyone's favourite atelier bow wow called subdiverbia, which is the sort of intergenerational process, not always intergenerational, but of subdivision and further subdivision of land into smaller and smaller and smaller parcels, which they're probably about 3 generations ahead of us in that respect, which is why you get so many cute little teeny tiny 1.5 metre wide houses in Japan.
This is also where the community aspect of what we started doing comes into it, because our friends and ourselves were all trying to stay in the same neighbourhoods more or less than we'd been in when we were studying, and so the architecture seemed like a hack to the system. You could spend the same amount to build something little on a scrap of city land than you would to move out to the next furthest suburb. So we tried to slot into that little zone. Yeah,
so that would describe all of these houses. They're basically built for the same cost as buying a rundown villa in a similar area.
Not a similar area, like a further out area, right? It had to be,
better.
Yeah, it was about 70% of the neighbouring cost of the house at the time.
And so all the same considerations to do with climate. In Wellington, obviously, trying to hide from the wind and stay open to the sun, which is tricky when the wind comes from the northwest.
Yeah, you're carving out tiny little nooks.
And clinging onto little hillside sites that are fairly precipitous. The only construction access for this was down a 1-metre wide pathway, about 60 stairs. So they had pretty fit builders. by the end.
Yeah, and very lightweight structure.
Another little leftover, we kind of thought of this as like a missing tooth, because there used to be a house there, as you could probably guess, and it burnt down in the 70s and stayed as a little kind of scraggly garden. And so this was the last site within a heritage area in Aotearoa Valley.
It was a really great project for a number of reasons. You know, just a lot of the time we're looking at housing standing alone, and for it to be part of its street and have that conversation with the planning department, and for the building to now exist and people to like it. It was just a bit more of a challenging context. A lot of the time you're just designing for the people who live in the house, but in this case... Yeah,
council wanted to look very Wild West with
you
know, all the twiddly bits. But in the end they liked it. And so, yeah, this whole section is about 200 square metres. This is basically was the granny flat of the granny of some friends of ours, and they'd lived next to her.
She was in the main house, they were in the granny flat, but anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, true. So yeah, they lived in the little granny flat, which could have fit inside the square of the donut, that is the squared donut. And while they did that, they saved and worked up enough money to build this place, which again is about an 88 square metre house with a little separate studio and a really lovely garden in the middle, which you can actually go out into in Wellington in spring, which feels like quite an achievement.
And grow, flowers. Look at them.
Yeah.
Little hothouse.
So yeah, that's like training. Which...
We think of that in retrospect as training.
Oh, yeah.
Because we started to worry about subdividia.
Yeah, and we got thinking these bits of land were getting increasingly expensive. Also, that thought that if you keep infilling all the little leftover bits, where's all your impermeable land? Where are the trees? Where are the gardens that everyone values? And
all the tui?
Yeah, all of those guys. So, it was great, and I guess it will be part of the solution to some of the housing issue, but it's not really going to solve it. And if you did try to use that to solve it wholesale, you're going to end up with a city that maybe doesn't work in the way that we want them to.
Yeah, so I think in this talk, but also alongside other people that we find discussing these problems, we find people proposing like a more official version of this, and we think that is part of it. But, the materials crisis that we're in, the land use crisis, we think it's really important for humans just to shrink our footprint. So that's kind of where we once we reflected on this period of work, we thought what we're keen to do is get more people comfortably closer together.
No garages.
More gardens.
Yeah. So during the same period, we were wanting to build a house for ourselves to live in, and again, other friends of ours were in the same boat, had young families, and so we, having had a very positive experience with our buddies in Wanganui around the idea of clubbing together, which people love to advise you never to do, so we clubbed together and bought a very questionable hillside in Miramar in Wellington, which is a sort of fairly central suburb, and it's 400 square metres at about 35 degrees. And we thought, oh, sweet, we'll put 2 houses on that.
We thought we would put 2 attached houses on it, but the council said they did not like that.
Well, and the banks, so at that point, this is also a related point, because we're a kind of a funny little collective, banks didn't want to lend to us as a collective, so we had to have separate houses with separate titles and separate mortgages in order for it to work, which was fine. But that
it was very marginal, and the timing, the neighbours built 2 years later than us because it took that long for them to organise their finance. So we were really all very excited to have houses, but it certainly wasn't, it was just, that was what I was saying about the difference between staying in town versus staying a little bit further out. But we all say strongly it's worth it. We're all very happy to be there.
So then we kept thinking about this idea of scale and collective stuff. This slide's not really about anything except for this end one. It's kind of funny. I think we didn't have enough work on, so we did this tower, which we decided would be called the Baby Bus Tower, and we put a few pictures of it around about, so like people took it seriously, which was kind of amusing. But we thought, okay, every level of the apartment building is a sort of a home with two open corners, which are basically the front garden and the back garden, and the idea that people could club together and build something like this.
I think the point really is that we're working on things down this end, you know, while imagining that we could do things at this end with no proof that we could.
True. Yep. And then things that we actually worked on, well, that were real projects. So, yeah, ranging, I guess the idea that this housing, nasty housing issue thing is happening across all these scales, and probably every part of it has a role to play. Yeah,
I mean, you know, it's these are our friends, these three, and that's a bunch of people we don't know, you know. So as architects, often architects work for friends. I don't know if that's how it normally goes, but you know, we can only solve so much within this kind of pool of people that we know, I guess.
Yeah, and so yeah, looking at like number of dwellings per metre squared for each of these schemes, and trying to figure out like what a
per ground area metre squared.
Yeah, what a sort of achievable density is for these sort of collective projects. So like, I guess the most obvious argument for doing this sort of thing, other than the social benefits and all of those sorts of things that I think people are probably pretty well aware of.
Increasingly so.
Yeah, like if you're buying something that someone else has built for you, there's obviously a profit margin, and that goes on top of the cost of the land and the building and equals the cost of it to you. With a resident-led development, obviously whatever you spend is the cost of the thing. Doesn't mean it's necessarily cheaper, because people like to build nicer things or, you know, shared facilities or whatever, but you basically get a better thing for the same price, potentially. And what we also like about it as designers is that it allows for a diversity of housing, because the people who are going to live in these houses are involved in the creation of them. What they actually want is reflected in the building, not what a real estate agent or a developer presumes people to want. So coming back to cars and laundries and numbers of bathrooms and things like that, that all kind of changes a bit. So we'll just sort of run through a few different projects that we've worked on. Some of them haven't happened, some of them have, but it's kind of interesting because they're all under that same collective. So this was a fairly central city site in Whangarei. Just happened to have a whopping big backyard of 7,000 square metres.
It just happened, a toxic fill backyard, but
yeah.
Yes, just happened to have a backyard.
So in the end, this one was probably sunk by geotechnical concerns, but this was a collective of about 18 households, and one of their key drivers was to have a range of housing types there, from little teeny studio apartments up to 3 and 4 bedroom semi-detached houses and terraces as well.
These are types of buildings that are aggressively not built by developers in Whangarei.
Oh, yeah.
And the appetite for them is just, you know, just because the standard person doesn't want to buy one, there's still a good 20% of people who are absolutely desperate to have something like that. So we're just really keen to keep showing examples of what you can do and that they are popular.
So this is an example of a compliant subdivision scheme for the same site, which would basically have gone through the resource consent process at a breeze. We had to convince the council that this wasn't a fanciful proposition, which we kind of found an interesting process.
Because the buildings are just a little bit closer to each other.
So basically keeping cars at the edge of the site and giving over the middle of the site to a big stormwater basin, which is also a recreational area, with a common facility at one end of it.
And so their plan was to have, you know, a communal orchard and a communal building and a vegetable garden. And this is a project that was in central Wellington. It's a retrofit of an existing carpet factory building, and a family that wanted to all live on the same site but in their own dwellings. So to the back of that bottom image on this one here, The three colours, ones are the apartments for children our age and their children, and the orange is for the grandparents, and below that is a shared living dining area.
So and again, like learning from the little courtyard house we did, always trying to make a communal space that's protected from the wind and open to the sun and able to grow things, and use that as a buffer zone between those spaces. One thing that kept coming up with all of these projects was the kind of idea of them being equitable between the different residents. Obviously, no one wants to take the shitty apartment, which a developer might design because it was a bit hard to make them all good. Whereas, obviously, in this, you want to be able to look everyone in the eye and say, yeah, these are all really, really good. So making sure everyone has the same access to light and air and view and all of the things that people want out of a house.
This is the 24 household co-housing project that we worked on.
So this was started by one of our colleagues and good friends, Jessie Matthews, with another woman, Firebrand Bronwyn, there she is. And they basically, built up a collective of 24 households.
They are an impressive, they had a momentum team. They're an impressive group of people and developed very impressive communication systems to try and get this building across the line.
So this is basically roughly the size of a suburban house lot. And this was 25 households in one 6-storey and one 7-storey and one 4-storey building. And again, similar sort of principle of getting a big garden area in the middle to protect the light and amenity of everyone, and grouping the public parts of the apartment buildings on that face so that the outdoor spaces would overlook that area and give greater likelihood of people stopping for a cuppa or a chat or a cup of beer even, possibly.
Cup of beer. Yeah, but the garden, has always been a really important part of what we are up to. So much of what makes a house lovely is what you look out onto.
So having thought about all of these things, in the spirit of architects all over the show, we post-rationalised some principles of co-housing design. But these were really just things that, as we looked over these projects and reflected on them, they're just common threads. Lots of them are really obvious, but sometimes it's good to say obvious things. So the first one is that idea of pooling the site. So rather than chopping the thing up, like you saw in that subdivision image, into small private areas, pooling the shared space into one more generous area.
Which also brings all the building envelope close to each other, so neighbours effectively end up insulating each other, which massively reduces the overall material requirement for a building.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, Tim already touched on this one. No bad apartments. We don't want anyone to feel like they got the sucky one.
Nor do we want to be responsible for a sucky one.
Yeah, also true. Demote cars. Look, I mean, honestly, there are definitely a handful of people who need cars to get to their front doors. And we can definitely accommodate that in cities. But on the whole, walking outside is actually really nice. And if we shelter it, it's even better. So...
And that's the upshot. All of these things are central. They're well-connected sites. You don't need a car if you live somewhere like that.
And you get better public transport.
Yep. And easier access to share car facilities, all that sort of stuff. Pretty obvious.
Share car facilities are really making a lot of difference on that one. So finest lease carries through from our work right from the beginning. We're always just trying really to have the most lovely thing for the equivalent of, we started out looking at what rent cost and tried to work out what that would equate to in a mortgage repayment, work out if we could hustle the deposit and then get a house that's a nice house as opposed to renting someone else's crappy house. So we love it. We love just trying to get something, nicer out of the same ingredients.
And so that's something architecturally, that's getting the massing right, not pouring heaps of energy into the detailing and the cabinetry and that kind of thing, and going, look, if we put the building in the right place, face it the right way, spend lots of money on windows, and there's probably nothing left. But that's basically going to be a really good house. And then anything you get beyond that is great, but it's not really the point. Grumpy space, everyone gets scared of any kind of collective thing. It's good to reassure people that you design things in a way so you can run away from everyone else and be an introvert or have an introspective time. It's not all about being all in all the time.
It is for some people, but if you're not
But
into
you
that,
want to run
should
away
be
from
able to
them.
get away,
Yeah.
Civic chores, I mean, so we're about to speak about a project that some friends of ours live in, and they talk about this, their laundries in the shared building, and they were just chatting about this the other day, and they were like, and then just all the things that they sorted and thought about and considered while doing laundry. It was a really great
We should add to that, there's also an extra toilet in that building.
Yeah.
And they all shared these highly personal stories about how and when they use the other toilet, because the houses are all quite small, so it's like having another toilet just down there can be kind of cool. We won't go into too much detail on that. It's been the change, if there is any, you can make your house nicer than you would have got if you bought a developer.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like change at the time. It just actually ends up being a nicer house. But so this is the co-housing house that got built. So we're very, very fond of this one.
So again, this is a pretty central, not that it really looks it in that picture, but this is about a 10-minute bike ride to downtown Wellington, especially if you've got an e-bike. So these the people. They were all kind of variously looking at ways of buying a house, and didn't have any luck. And then they started throwing around the idea of clubbing together.
So much of that was actually, as it comes down to, about finance. Two of these women who live on their own, and trying to buy a house as a woman alone is incredibly hard, just from the point of view of getting a bank loan. So we know a couple of them, and then they engaged us early on, pretty informally, to help them find a site. Not find one, rate a site. So they kept sending us Trade Me ads, and if one looked remotely good enough, we'd go and have a look at it. Then they arrived at this one, which we gave a 5-star, 5 out of 5 rating, basically due to good amenity, good solar access, lack of neighbours that were going to ruin their lives. Whose lives they would ruin if we designed it badly too. So like fewer affected parties from a kind of resource consent point of view. And a sunshine shading point of view.
Yep. Close to a park, close to bus stops, all the stuff that people say. And so we said, try and buy it. And then they got all doled up and went to the lawyers and negotiated with the banks, and now the banks have this whole new fancy loan, which is called whatever that is called. Flatting loan.
But they realised that 5 incomes are actually much more resilient. So they kind of got over the fact that some of them had more deposits, some of them had better incomes. The whole picture looked rosy in the end.
So this is the site. They bought this house. The other great thing about buying a place that's already got somewhere to live on it is that they could all live there while the planning of the thing was happening. We're getting consents and everything. So during that point, they're paying off their mortgage. They're investing in their own project. And I think by the time it came around to build, they'd paid off the mortgage on the house, which was really funny because then they got rid of it.
Guy came round on a truck.
He paid them $1, which he didn't even pay them, which is weird.
It's the contract principles.
And then this photo makes it look like they did lots of building, but they didn't really. They dug a ditch, which was good. That made them feel good. And so, it just sort of nestles into its environment.
We like to think it's not too scary to the neighbours,
Council was really supportive of this, even though it was, I think at the time you could have 2 dwellings on a site that size. So this is 4 plus this weird building that they didn't know what to call, which was like a common room / greenhouse. So getting back to some of those ideas, like pulling the good bits of the site. So we wanted everyone, one of the good things about the site is that it faces north, so it has a long access to the sun. Everyone could get really good sun into their apartments. There's a special bit at the east and west where you look down to Lyell Bay and the airport, or to the Cook Strait and the afternoon sun. So we wanted those to be communal areas. So one's a veggie garden, the other one's the basically the cheapest building we could build, which is the laundry and kind of a conservatory to hang your washing or hang out in.
And like little mini garages for bikes.
So that's the wee building.
They're coming into the street, this like semi-public, well, it's like a street off a street as you go.
So that's also, as a shared building, that's also like the little public face of this residential thing. So it's quite nice if you're going past. We did this just the other day. We were driving past and on bikes, and you could see stuff was going on in there. So you just pop in and see who's around. It's quite nice. So yeah, that's that room. Gets used for like parties. You know, some of them have had kids now. They're using that as that sort of overflow space, which is a bigger room than any of the rooms in their houses.
One of them weaves flax, and that takes up a lot of floor area.
Yeah. Oh, there's all the little mini garages. These are the biggest garages we've done. That's not true.
So this entry porch access comes up a little bit later in what we're doing, but I've been back to this house so many times, and I wander up onto this little private street, and there's just always someone standing there. It's just like, oh, hey, and then you go past everyone's kitchen windows, and it's like, oh, how are you? And then somebody's like talking about dinner plans. It's just like it's really functioning like a little mini street, because there's 4 households that live off it, and so they all know each other, and their kids are riding up and down on bikes, and it's just a safe, lovely shared area.
Yeah, so that's like communal and then grumpy. So you can, any of those decks, you can be completely private. No one can even see that you're there. So it's quite nice, the two sides of the building.
Yeah, because you don't see those people when you turn up.
Those are the front doors. You know, they painted the little bit a different colour each, which is kind of cool. All of them have a seat and a little bit of shelter from the rain and the wind. Kind of covered that. So it's that little back street. It's cool. All the plants are growing up now, and it feels really good up there. Private indoor space, house. So they're across 3 levels. Because of the topography of the site, you come in at the middle level, which is the largest, and then there's, with fairly minimal earthworks, we could get the 2 bedrooms and bathroom down below. And then up in that sort of gabled roof line, we got a 3rd, kind of like a little attic room. And that's been really good. It means working from home, kids' bedroom, guests to stay kind of thing. How big are these houses? They're about 80 square metres?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, they just look, we're working on this project at the moment for the New South Wales government, and they make these look incredibly tight because they've got all these kind of generous hallway allowances.
We had to follow the rules.
Yeah. So they're very tight. I mean, you know, we think they're comfortable, but maybe, yeah. They're certainly the smallest that you would make a room to call it that.
Make it sound really good.
I know, but it's awesome. I mean, I'm just reflecting on it, you know.
And so inside, it was really great. They all went to town with things like internal paint colours, which we didn't need to be involved in. It didn't really change the cost of things, but it means that every house feels really different when you go into it. And that just seems so obvious. So it's like, where are the things where you can have differences without it impacting on the cost of the thing? Same with kitchens. You know, they could, basically all the kitchens are the same, but they have different coloured fronts or tops or whatever. And it just makes them all feel a little bit special.
You don't get confused when you go to someone's house.
Yeah. Same with the bathroom.
Yeah.
And then exposed block, painted. We used a sort of commercial floor system with exposed macrocapa timber to get some wood in there. It smells nice, you know, all those sorts of things.
Okay, we got to hustle.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that one. It's cool. We like it.
Yeah. So then we were like, cool, this is great. This is the future of housing. How awesome for us.
Yeah, this is going to blow up.
Yeah. And then that happened.
And then that happened, yeah. So distressingly, you know, all of a sudden the cost to build these things just went off the charts. So what, over COVID, it went up about 50%.
Yeah, so they built that building that you just saw. All the other ones tanked because of the doubling of cost, but they built that one riding the wave of COVID, so their cost didn't go up.
Yeah, their builder was an absolute
40% cost increase since then just to build.
And then everyone knows what happened to the housing market and stuff. So we'd been sort of hoping for a recession in a way.
No, we know recessions are coming and we've got to do something with them. So.
And we'd been really wanting to be pretend to be builders again. So we had a sabbatical and built a house last year, which was a good time to reflect on things. So co-housing, get your pet policies sorted before anything else, because then you'll find out who you can live with. Some people feel very strongly about these things. So that's good.
That is the thing that people feel most strongly about. You think you're worrying about taps, you need to be
worried about the pets. Yeah. So that's an easy one. We're also thinking, it's quite a small cross-section of people that we're basically working with, like people who are happy with risk. They want something bespoke. They've got kind of
not enough money to have an actual architect.
Yeah, so it's probably not the kind of client base that your lecturers would suggest you go out and hunt.
Yeah, and willing to club in together as well. Like it's a hot pot. They're amazing.
Yeah, but they're cool, and obviously there's a few of these projects around.
Yeah.
The other thing, that. So that's another issue, but it's really about the amount of time. Like to do a project like this, you have to have time. You couldn't really do it if you had.
I mean, they're running pretty normal lives, but you need to not have the additional headwind of someone at the bank thinking that you're just not, So, they had the headwinds that some of us enjoy in this life.
Oh, yeah, they are really cool.
And they're really awesome.
Yeah. So the other thing for us about the scale of the group, like the big urban habitat project didn't fail because of any of the reasons that people thought it might, to do with interpersonal stuff because there's so many people. All of that was plain sailing, like they're really, really good. But it just kind of took too long and COVID happened.
Oh, because of, anyway, we won't get into that.
But the related point, like with a smaller number of people, you can be pretty nimble. Like the whole thing was arranged
like
pretty
Titanic.
much over. Yeah. So like they could make decisions, when the costing came in and it's too high, that same day we could go, hey, well, look, let's do something like this. And you get a flurry of messages go around, they're like, yeah, sweet. Rather than that process taking, 3 to 4 months or more. So that's, we feel like whilst it's probably not dense enough to solve the entire housing issue, it's a good step in the right direction, and it's quite manageable as a sort of a resident-led development.
Yeah, so if you're interested in taking control of your whole housing scene, you can probably get that one across without a development.
Yep.
But by the time you get up to 24 households.
Also, you won't get stung with commercial lending levies, which they've managed to avoid, but the larger groups can't avoid.
Yeah. Extra stuff isn't free. It's just split 4 ways in this case.
Yeah. So,
this is as close to free as we could get.
Yeah, and it works really well. You might not do it in Northland, it'd be a bit hot.
No, you definitely wouldn't do it.
Like we were talking about before, what are the things that are cheap to change?
Keep rolling, sorry. So these are what people are doing at the moment about this kind of gnarly multi thing. That's the funding thing.
Yeah, so banks know who you are now.
Yeah. And then we joke about how Ryman Healthcare have got it absolutely dialed,
So surely there's space for, rheumatism.
Yeah.
Disgruntled elder folk.
So we can do it better. You just use that same, I don't know, not us personally, but civically we could do it better.
Yeah.
We don't want to be greenfield developing, so we've just got to jam these buildings into whatever already stuffed up bit of earth there is and make it better, hopefully, by architecture.
So, one of the things, so the provinces, we've been living in the provinces of Whangarei for the last couple of years, and did this project in Palmerston North, which was probably one out the bag for Palmerston North. It's a mixed-use, owner-occupied, bike shop, house and graphic design studio in a part of town where nobody lives. And our clients had lived in the central city for years and were kind of zealous about it. And this has been quite a big thing for Palmy. It's a 2-stage development, so it'll keep growing. We had to find a kind of a way of splitting the site up into chunks so that they could do it over time. But yeah, they're loving it, and it's where they work and it's their home. It's all their eggs in one basket, and it seems to be working out.
Well, I think you mostly see this in buildings that have had a previous life, when somebody moves into them and makes it work for whatever their strange sort of lolly bag of interests are. But, you know, so many things get shoved into this typology that everybody's familiar with. But all these people's lives don't actually perfectly map onto those. So when you actually listen to individuals, which you've got the privilege to as an architect, you can, like, get these more wacky types of building out into the world, which, you know, they're really cool. It's really fun to work on.
So another thing we got excited about recently is the idea of microzoning. And it's the idea that you can actually specifically pick bits of the city and go, hey, these would actually be a really good set of properties to do something denser on. And without having to rewrite the whole spatial plan of the entire city, you go, hey, like, look, there's a park there or an old bowling lawn. There's great amenity. Put a 6-story building there.
And it's the nuance that's missing from this current conversation. Should we do 6 stories everywhere or should we do towers? It's like the reality is we don't need every single site in a certain given area to house all the people. It's going to be individual sites in those areas, and you know, just aligning those with ones that are going to have less effect on their neighbours and more benefits for the residents. It just seems like a really clever way to go.
This is probably confusing, but this is less confusing. So this is about putting more people into areas, you know, where people live already in single residential houses. And they found that, like, you actually piss off less people if you put denser housing in. You're actually affecting fewer people, and so it's a happy coincidence. So more density should actually be more agreeable to more of the existing residents.
Just piss off a few people heaps.
Adaptive reuse, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because there's already big buildings, and we can just use them for the kind of modern, whatever condition we live in.
This is a job we did in Wellington, opposite the architecture school. Got strengthened fairly insensitively in the 2000s, but basically there was this dilapidated commercial floor of building, and we turned it into 2 family apartments and one bedroom apartment, and no garages. Build to rent, you're going to hear about that sometime, eh?
Yeah, like 2 weeks from now, if you want to come back.
So we won't talk about that, but it seems like a good idea. But maybe use less concrete.
It's just owning it. It goes back to that owning thing. If you're owner-developer, you own it at the end of the day, so you make it as good as you need it to last. If you're a developer and you're selling, you've got there's nothing aligned with you making a better quality building that's going to last, whereas build-to-rent has that incentive.
So we're going to talk about this so fast because we're semi-not legally allowed to, and we have no time left, so that's good. So while we were building last year, we entered a competition in New South Wales to design standardised, basically apartments that could be rolled out across the state, which was run by the government architect of New South Wales. We got surprised because we won it, and so it's an idea we've thought about for years. Like, we do these nice little houses and we're like, well, you know, why can't this be a GJ Gardner house? Like, there's nothing to say that a good quality little house can't be bought off the plans. And of course, that's happened for years. Some of our earliest houses were standard plans in the 50s in Australia. I think most new houses were actually designed by architects because people bought them from these pattern books of pre-made plans that were designed by amazing architects like Robin Boyd and Harry Seidler, people like that. Anyway, we called it Pick and Mix because it made us think about dairies, which is fun. We started with all the things that we care about designing small houses, which is sort of what we've been learning. The things that people love about standalone houses, like porches and verandas and balconies. Basically, it's just a really big balcony and a front porch, and making sure that every apartment goes through the building, so you have 2 faces, passive ventilation.
You may notice this looks a lot like a renovated villa.
Yeah, if you squint.
Yeah, but then just put heaps of them all next to each other, really close together.
And by covering it in balconies, you protect it from overheating, you protect it from the rain.
And most importantly, on the one side of this is a garden. You're giving like a huge swathe of your site through to... We could come across this term deep soil, which you don't hear in New Zealand, but in Australia,
they're smart.
It's they're trying to get the root balls of the trees, so that they, it's a planning mechanism to keep large chunks of contiguous garden together.
It's actually really, really ground, not ground on top of a foundation.
Yeah.
So we developed a series of kind of modular apartments that all work to the same structural grid. They can fit together like a tangram, maybe.
Yeah, I guess so.
But you can compose them in different ways to respond to the size of the sites and the kind of context of the environment that they can go into.
And who's living in the buildings?
It's all kind of coming back to the idea of a perimeter block. This is sort of kind of a joke, but not really kidding. But yeah, a really big garden with a good urban street edge around the outside and lots of pedestrian access ways into it and through it. And then looking at how these things, even though they're modular, how can they be adapted? You can plan them differently depending on the orientation of them. They're all planned to work for mass timber construction, which
One of these
we're trying to...
drawings, this one here, we got really into the notion of like naked apartments where you just literally provide your plumbing fixings and then let everybody else do the rest, so you don't...
Fire engineers love it.
Yeah,
Yep.
love it.
And, you know, that's basically the idea that you could live outside most of the year in New South Wales in an apartment, which is basically like the houses that we do. So that's pretty much us.
That's us.
Yep. Yeah, thanks.